So please welcome him on stage.
Cheers to everyone, right? Thank you. Really, there is tremendous interest in hearing what you all have to say today. I mean, we have a full house here. So, before we kind of speak to this August panel and ask their views and their kind of controversial comments that a lot of people are backing here on various issues, I want to do a little exercise with all of you so that we get a sense who we're talking to. So, if you can just by raise of hands tell me how many of you watched any OTT web series in the last 1 week? Raise of hands. And I have a follow-up question. How many of you actually watch anything on television in the last 1 week? Raise of hands. All right. Fair bit of competition. Election, fair enough. Election, OTT could not do election this time. Maybe next time around they will be right there. Barring, of course, a couple of movies which seem like on that line. I mean, I'm just going to give a context to kind of where we are in OTT, and then, of course, we're going to open up to a kind of a live wire here discussion here. We all are kind of a viewer of any or one or more OTT service today. Latest BCG kind of prospecting on the industry should be of $5 billion by 2023. Which by many counts is immense and large. We have evolved from A word model to S word model kind of very efficiently and smartly. Then the mobile phone penetration, as we all understand, has kind of taken us all by surprise. The data points, affordability, and the reach to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 even villages has been immense. And of course adoption across all demos, right? That's very pleasing, right? It's not kind of one demo kind of led consumption. Almost every demo across India is actually consuming this content with fervor. So it certainly is a transformation movement so far as entertainment is concerned. And these are the people who kind of are responsible for that transformation. So by a loud kind of applaud, let's welcome them and the kind of very entertaining, and it kind of belongs to late evenings very often, so even that responsibility is yours. So I'm gonna start with some kind of open question, and Vijay, maybe you can come in to kind of start this. A typical mobile phone, I used to sell mobile phone before I finished school, can hold possibly, and I'm talking across India, not necessarily Delhi, Bombay, maybe 2 or 3 great apps, and that's largely the space. And we have about 32 streaming services, and all kind of unique at different life cycles and doing impressive work. How will this kind of all evolve? Will we have place for 32, or will there be consolidation, or we are far from that point today?
I think it's very early days. As much as everyone in this room is a consumer of streaming services, I think there are over 200 people out there who haven't had their first streaming experience yet. So that opportunity is really exciting. From the context of making things available and what will customers care about is driven by only 2 inputs. At least at Prime Video, that's what we strongly believe in. One is the quality of the content itself. And by that I mean the product, the UX, the convenience and everything else bundled in. And the second is value. The more customers perceive Prime Video to be a great value, they're going to believe that it's a must-have service, and therefore it will create a kind of a flywheel for itself. And that's what we've been trying to do. And I would like to believe that this is just the beginning of a long journey, and a very exciting one for all of us, because you're not talking to any one India, right? You're talking to multiple Indias. So you'll have tons of lessons to learn from one cohort, and when you step into the other, and a whole bunch of lessons. So I think that's really where we see ourselves, and I'd like to believe that that's where the ecosystem is at this point.
And Zubin, taking a lead from that point, you of course have realized this, that there are many Indians, one India, and you kind of champion a couple of regional pockets first to start rather than going all over. I mean, how's your journey been since you are kind of the last entrant at the sense, and also the newest, so whichever way you look at it?
So, as you know, Shimaru has been in the business of content for the last 5 decades, across various platforms and across various genres of content. We actually have taken learnings of all our experience over the last 55 years and brought that all into the OTT app that we've created, OTT platform that we've created called Shimaru. The premise actually has been that we've always seen that the beauty of our content is that it's been organically consumed over and over again. Our repeat watching has been tremendous, even on a platform like YouTube, where we get 3 billion views a month. 3 billion views a month on YouTube, just from organic traffic alone. And we don't spend a dime on driving any of that traffic. We also look at our watch times, we also look at our repeat viewing. And that's what actually gave us a lot of insights to decide and say, okay, you know what, there's a huge base of customers and users who actually look at content from a very different angle. There's one breed, and the entire breed is sitting here itself, which says new, original, latest, and the likes. And then there's the other lot, which is I want to be in my skin, I want to be in my comfort zone, and I want to get something that I've watched over and over again many, many times. And the beauty is that people are willing to pay for that as well. So for example, if I have a classic category on Bollywood, in the last 3 months of launch, we have actually seen some tremendous offtake on just the classic pack. It's a 49 rupee a month and a 500 rupee a year pack, only for the classic cinema, classic Bollywood pack. And we've seen some amazing offtake just organically on that one pack. What we basically do is use YouTube as a platform to drive snippets of content there, and then drive the final viewing of the entire content on the platform. And that's where we are getting early traction on the platform from.
But let me push you a little more on this. Do you feel that you have a kind of a more kind of a clearer vision since you come after all the learnings of all the players, or you believe they have a first mover advantage?
Not really. I think there's enough space for everyone. And
but not on the mobile phone. Mobile phone has very limited space for multiple apps.
So on the mobile phone itself, there are a lot of players, and there's a lot of reason for everyone to take content. And today, if you look at it, everyone has a mobile, and there's enough and more room for people to buy their mobile again and again. So mobile phones, or whether it's content, everyone has a space. We see it very clearly. And there are 2 ways to look at it. So one way is, of course, D2C and go directly to segments, different segments or different needs. Whether it's devotional as a need, whether it's kids as a need, or whether it's classics as a need. So we go after those needs. And regional, so Gujarati is a huge offering that we offer. So every such category has a need for sure, and we go after capitalizing on that particular long tail of smaller segments.
What's happening in Gujarati? I heard of a new TV channel also being launched in Gujarati. You have a very strong Gujarati service. Is there a new revelation? Because a lot of people kind of ignored this pocket for a while.
Gujarati has been a low supply market on content. Movies has been low. But what we have capitalized on is movies and nataks, which is the big draw in the Gujarati space. Right now, we've got probably about 70% of the available content in the market as far as Gujarati is concerned. And all of that is sitting on our current platform. We promise some new content every other week to a customer on the platform, which is why we've seen some amazing traction on that as well.
So we've been late when it was the need. Because I used to run a travel channel, and any travel show, 40% viewership would come from Gujaratis. And they would love the travel show. So I think, to your point, I think the supply side has responded slightly slowly. Aparna, You have, of course, I mean, Z5 has had a tremendous growth story. I mean, in the sense, the growth, the numbers, and the pace is kind of unmatched. You have an inherent advantage coming from from a Z group, which is kind of known for its content. You have, I don't know, 60, 70 channels, 40, 50,000 hours of original content coming onto your platform, plus your original, which is kind of coming one a week kind of pace. So, do you think you are at a strategic advantage? Is that the reason you kind of are growing at the pace you are?
Strategic advantage, definitely, because we leverage the strength of the network. We have a huge consumer base that comes to the platform to catch up on Z network shows. IPL, no IPL, this just keeps going. Nothing has really affected our numbers. Anything traditional has not affected our numbers at all. So definitely there is a strategic advantage being from the house of a broadcaster. The originals and the movies, the latest movie strategy is, of course, to open up newer audiences. The audiences over and above your regular television viewing audiences definitely would come to your platform.
You're a neutral person in sense, if I may say, from this, because we want to understand how do you differentiate between television content sitting on the web and original content created for web. They sit in many platforms, including yours, on the same level. How do you see them differently from a creative lens?
I think for us, I think the big thing is that we're not playing the app download game, because that's why we got an player. That's the big thing that we've kind of jumped that bandwagon. That's why we're operating at a scale which is at about 75 million daily actives and about 175 million monthly actives. So we already have those consumers who out of 5 Android phones already have us in their phones. We just need to make them know that there is a streaming option now available. So ask them the migration story and really telling them about
from a creative lens.
So the reason why I said all that is because at scale, there is a huge amount. India is a content-hungry country. You cannot probably give them, say, 10 shows and then expect all 10 shows to work at that scale. So for us, from a strategic, content strategic point of view, we've got Sony, of course, as a partner, and most people who ever created web series, whether it be TVF, DICE, Pocket Aces, anybody who is able to partner with us, right, to give them that level of scale, to be able to reach that level of consumers, is one end of the spectrum. And the second of the spectrum is actually now trying to understand these consumers, understand what they're looking at, what they're consuming, how they're consuming, and then develop a full-fledged original strategy to cater to those need states. So for us, I think both are critical because both are huge learning curves. And then based on those learnings that we understand, we try and create an entire original strategy going forward.
Ali, Heroes has entertained millions for many, many decades. But you don't have a broadcast business. You don't have, you of course have come to the app business recently. How would you kind of explain the journey of Heroes and the vision that you hold? It will differentiate you from the rest.
Sure. I think it kind of starts from taking a step back, right? I think it's about identifying in terms of what you believe consumers will be willing to pay for, and there are consumers who will be not willing to pay for certain content, right? And that comes from the deep insight that if you're watching Charlie with My Finger or Dogs and Skateboard, are you willing to pay a subscription for that content or not? And I think that's where the kind of origination comes from. So Eros, with the kind of legacy of saying that we've been potentially one of the first vertically integrated studios in the country with IP of over 12,000 films across 10 languages, has the biggest kind of repository of being able to dip into the consumer's pocket to demand a subscription price, right? And that's the reason why we're live and paying customers from 135 countries around the world, not just in India. So I think that's the premise of why this business, because you've got broadcast players essentially whose primary business runs, and nothing against that, whose primary business runs of television reach on GEC audiences across the country, which is run by a combination of subscription and advertising. We don't have that legacy in terms of a broadcast business, which actually becomes an advantage because you essentially have qualitative viewing for new movies, and movies, as Aparna also mentioned, tend to become one of the largest draw patterns and consumption patterns in terms of repeat viewership. With that experience, we actually take our learning, kind of dipping into what Amazon is trying to do, primarily is trying to do, is look at how you're able to create a premium experience with all the kind of movie production, creative experience of driving original programming to that level. Right, so for example, we launched a show in Modi. Traditionally, you'll have Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore coming in as one of your top 3 cities. but the number one city of viewership was Ahmedabad. So I'll just give you an example of potentially we being able to actually attract newer audiences to the internet and internet video for the first time, where Ahmedabad doesn't feature in the top 10 cities in any marketing content campaign. For the first time in the show like Modi. So what we're doing is kind of taking the movie kind of catalog which is more mass market and then trying to create a more younger audience with the same values of experience with some of the originals that we've done, and whether it was stuff we did with Flip with Bijoy, or whether it was Modi with Umesh Shukla, or whether it was Smooth, I'm saying that's what we've got to learn better with each show that we've launched in the last 6 months.
Vijay, I hear, you mentioned about international 135 country marriages. So we mentioned about deeper population to Gujarat and Punjab. You had an early start, obviously, and you had a phenomenal success. Amazon Prime. How do you see when more players are coming in? Is there pressure on you to kind of do more faster, or you kind of wanted to see how they fare and learn from them? What is your opinion on more players coming in?
Well, not really. There's absolutely no pressure. I think our singular focus has and will always be in the customer. For us, everything we do, all the decisions we take, and every bit of product, experience, content that you see, and the value that we try to drive is driven from our constant understanding of the customer's tastes and preferences as it exists today, and being able to evolve with that, because it is entertainment after all. They will get more discerning as you tell more stories and so on and so forth. And I did speak about many Indians. Their tastes and preferences change. So we remain very committed and driven by understanding her needs today. And if you look at how we've gone about building this out, it follows a very easy to understand pattern. Firstly, we believe, interesting stat is that Amazon.in delivers to 99.9% of the PIN codes in India, which then makes it very exciting for us, because we like to believe that we will want to cover the length and width of the country as Prime Video as well, right? And if that's the case, then we've got to be driven by variety. We've got to be able to give them the latest and the greatest movies, because movies build familiarity and repeat viewing, as my colleagues have discussed upon. But what's also interesting is that movies draw people into a new service and allow it to become a habit. Right? Because it comes with built-in awareness, it comes with a certain level of expectation. There is a price comparison they make for a ticket to the theaters versus on the service, all of that stuff works. Subsequently, it's equally important to recognize what needs of theirs are being met already, and what are the need gaps. When we came in, we recognized that cinematic TV was a huge need gap. There was this hunger for that kind of content, but there was no place for customers to access it. And if you look at the success that we've had, right from Inside Edge, which was our very first show, to more recently, 4 More Short Plays and Made in Heaven and Mirzapur and all these shows, we've really committed to the cinematic ambition, finite fiction, heavily serialized, potential of multiple seasons. And what we've learned here is that it's a craft that takes time. So you can't rush it. You can't expect to be doing it just because there's this innate demand from customers and try and cut a few corners. We recognize that. It only stays cinematic if you're able to give it the time it takes to be able to bring it in its full glory. And so I think we're going to stay committed to doing all of this stuff. And as long as we have the vote of confidence from our customers, and we believe that we're giving them value, which is, and believe me, our customers are very open. Yes. They tell us what they like and what they don't like, and it all happens in real time. And I think that's really what drives us. And I believe the opportunity, as I said, is just about getting started. I would like to believe this is true for everyone.
You mentioned earlier also many countries, many India, one India. Are the sensibilities of Bharat and India from consumer point of view OTT are very different? You plan content, create content kind of differently from the two?
They're even more nuanced. I think Bharat and India is kind of simplifying it.
Okay.
Right? It's way more nuanced. I think the magic here is that if you tell a great story, we've noticed that the more authentic you are to the roots of the story, the more it travels.
Right.
Mirzapur has fans from Coimbatore and Trichy. And one would argue when you were sitting, developing the show that, hey, this is not even going to be understood by people who speak regular Hindi, right? So I think that's the magic. But you have to keep in mind that even when you're creating content, say in Tamil, what will work with in Madurai will be deeply nuanced versus what is cosmopolitan Chennai. And I think that's just the name of the game now. And the beauty is that creators have the opportunity to actually do this without any of the economic constraints around it.
Right. But what is, of course, same content of multiple languages, and of course, to this point, if the story could be from, any part of the country, if it is done well, it can resonate across the world, as we've seen in many content cases. You, of course, have a lot of original content going in Tamil, especially now, and perhaps in Bangla later. When you kind of think of Tamil as an audience, Telugu as an audience, versus North India as an audience, what are the kind of filters you apply which are any different?
Great storytelling and narratives, but of course, I can't take away the credit from that. But how true the story is to its roots. Is it a story that is meant to be told in Tamil? Will it largely cater to my Tamil-speaking audience? And in fact, it's not anymore just language or a city or a particular demographic anymore. It's a segment of one almost for all of us. So if it's a great Tamil show, we not just see those in Chennai or other parts of Tamil Nadu or Sri Lanka or Singapore consume it. We have a lot more audiences even nationally which want to sample this show. We recently launched a show called Auto Shankar. It has had such phenomenal response from across the country. So it's not remained only a Tamil show anymore.
I just want to add a point here because I know while we are talking about all the content we are creating, it's important to understand, also recognize that there is a shift when it comes to authenticity. If you look at the success of a recent Kannada film called KGF and the success it had in Hindi, right? Everyone earlier used the label of Bahubali, which was really fantasy, and so it was agnostic to regions. It was set in a period that everyone would relate to. KGF is set in the 70s and the 80s, and it traveled and it north of 50-60 crores as a dub film. I think it was the first dub film in Kannada.
On that point, has the consumer changed and evolved in the last 30 years, or only the access has changed? There's no access on the same day.
Yeah, I can answer. I think the consumers evolve, right? I think there's different sets of consumers watching television and there's different sets of consumers watching this because the new set of consumers have been exposed to a lot of the shows originally that started off in the US with the likes of Netflix, Hulu, Prime Video themselves, and a lot of the kind of top 5 to 6 cities got access and the penetration started with the classic kind of early adopters. Right? And I think that started off as a culture, and then that culture kind of transcended to what India has to present in terms of original programming. So, picking into what my colleagues have said, I think it's important to be true to your story because that's where the audiences start drawing in. I think we spend a lot of time on languages, but I think with like globalization, you can buy the same piece of clothing anywhere around the world. Essentially, content travels better, or even like music and content travel better than potentially like commerce.
We're holding this debate in English, and most of the audience speaks English as the first primary language. When we see consumption of entertainment and we see television, we see OTT, perhaps less than 5% is in English. What really is the future of English content produced in India on these services?
I'll try and answer that question in two parts. Just take the conversation forward here. I think all content is really catering to a need state. Right? To us, if it's a voyeuristic need state or an excitement, escape, there is something that the consumer is actually wanting to watch to satisfy a need state. That would come from any story or any language. We'll watch Narcos in Spanish and read the subtitles. Be really happy. KGF is a great example. That story is travel. If the consumer is wanting to watch that story, he's in the mood to watch crime, in the mood to watch something, he will find the content that he's looking for.
But it's not growing.
But in English, the only point is that if it is only in English, right, that to me at a scale operation, you negate a huge amount of audience for sure. Because if it just becomes English, then you have negated a huge audience as such. But if you are available like in multiple languages, even with that English option, probably the story will go a lot further. So the availability of the story in multiple languages is important. Which language then becomes largely a strategic market sizing kind of discussion.
Are you planning an entire English product?
For us, at that scale, it's a little tough. I don't think we'll ever do it.
No, but I think there's a different way to look at this, right? English was restricted in terms of distribution because cable operators and channels control in terms of what frequency it ran on based on the carriage, right? So you can't say English didn't travel beyond a certain point. When at scale, if you look at quality stories that are relevant and that make sense, people can associate with, it's definitely, one thing I can tell you for sure, that English will be a larger percentage share of the overall consumption than the percentage share it saw on television. That's pretty certain, because if there's quality storytelling, people will watch it. It doesn't matter the
But the
language.
English OTT is also kind of, I can take example of in Heaven, it's a kind of different kind of English, right? It's a lot
So I'm talking, when I refer to English programming, I'm talking about LA-based, studio-based shows that are made in the US. This is what Made in Heaven is, or what we do with Smoke, shows like that is basically what we call as a spoken language. If a spoken language is a mix of English and Hindi, then that's spoken language that's more locally curated and created. These are what we call as classic imports rather, which are shows made for a certain audience, but if it's a good story, what we can guarantee is English will travel better than it did in television. What that percentage is going to be a lunatic guess.
right. But,
Rajiv,
yes, please.
we had in fact a very interesting learning from this. Currently called, which is the biopic of Sunny Leone, which is on Z5 platform.
I'm doing very well.
And of course doing very well. Its original version was in English because of course we had to remain true to the story, and because she was born in Canada and raised there, obviously she will speak English. It would be unfair to make her speak in Hindi at home. So the original show is some bit of Hindi, a lot of English and Punjabi, because that is the language she spoke with her family. And all initial research before we launched the show said that इसमें बहुत English है. There's a lot of English in this. A lot of her accent couldn't be followed. And of course we aided it with subtitles. And then the feedback was ये बहुत जल्दी जाता है. It's too fast to read subtitles. So now on the Z5 platform, you have a Karanjeet code which is in English, a pure Hindi version of it, which is very desi, which is, if there were a commercial film on Sunny Leone's life, that's what it would be. A Tamil version, a Bangla version, a Marathi version, Telugu version, and a Malayalam version. And let me tell you, the Hindi, Tamil, and the Malayalam version are the most shocking of it all.
Jubin, when I speak to my friends in television and content creators, and they want to enter a new market, they want to understand the culture, the base level consumer, and what inspires them to watch content television. When I speak to the web service legends, they try to kind of push the boundary, they want to experiment a little, they want to take the society to the next level. How do you balance the two? I mean, are you going to change the society, or are you going to emanate from the society? And how do you have it if you are casting a new market altogether?
As I said, there is already some learnings of a particular segment in a particular consumption form. For example, we've seen a lot of traction of all our content on a DTH platform, which is a DTH value-added services over and above your normal Tata Sky pack. You can buy another service, and we power a lot of those services for the last 2.5 years. We've seen some tremendous traction for paid content happening out there. So that's one learning, and we take all those learnings to decide, okay, this is the kind of traction, this is the kind of content, these are the kind of films, these are the kind of shows that will actually work in that kind of a market or for that kind of a segment. We have some sort of a run-up to learning on that front. It means
But a popular narrative I hear in Delhi, Bombay, elsewhere, consumer is, I watch OTT because this content was never available to us elsewhere. In a sense, because it's not available on television is the reason some of the content actually has been loved and appreciated by audiences. So how do you balance the two of learning of the past, which is perhaps doing the same or more of the same, versus doing new?
So we see it as two parts of the same coin, two sides of the same coin. There is of course the new and the fresh content that's available and that is supposed to be created. Frankly, we look at it from a profitability point of view. It's still a while away and it probably will be a burn game for the next 5 years. We also see on the other side of that same coin, we see that there's a huge amount of traction for existing content being replayed on another device. and consumed, and there's a huge traction, smaller segments, but a lot of traction for people to pay for the same service on OTT. And I'm seeing that already happening in the last quarter of our launch.
Right. Vijay, what you're right, of course, is a lady who has power of 40,000 content pipeline coming every year. So my question to you is, I'm sure you can also kind of open those files if you wish to. How much content, original content, is actually enough? I mean, we have a major player who doesn't do more than 800 hours of original content a year. It has to live around the world.
That's a really interesting question. So there's really no magic number. And what we believe is impactful content. So all along, through our evolution, where we are and where we're going, our goal is to be able to bring to our customers consistently content that reflects their tastes and preferences in the most impactful manner. So when it comes to movies, we go after the latest and greatest and we try and bring it at the earliest window possible. So that's something that we do. When it comes to original series, we do not wish to compromise on the cinematic vision whatsoever, and we recognize that it takes time. And so we're willing to curate the content, give it as much time as it takes to get to some kind of reasonable cadence, which is, if you look at the paths, we had one show in 2017, we had 5 last year, this year we will exit with 10 and hopefully 12 and thereafter. So it takes time. But frankly, I don't believe that we're at a stage where the customers are thumping on our doors and saying, I need X number of hours or Y number of hours. What they're really asking for is, tell us great stories. We do have a very strong ambition to be able to tell fresh narratives to existing themes. We do believe customers today are in an evolutionary society, and so certain entertainment mediums provide them with what was or what is. We are about what can be or what truly is. And so there are all of those creative decisions to be taken. So insofar as we are concerned, I'm very happy that there are multiple services that have different pipelines, that have broadcast input and so on and so forth. We believe that ultimately the customer is the one who's going to make the choice, and she's pretty smart.
Okay, you've done tremendous work on consumer research. You have all listening tools, all techniques available. When a consumer moves from platform A to B, generally, without naming anyone, what is the one broad reason he starts new subscription?
Well, I can't speak for movement, but I can definitely share with you why she would start watching Prime Video. Couple of reasons. First one is the overall experience itself, and I'm going to bundle that with content, the UX, the convenience, the multi-device, the proprietary software that allows you to set your own data quality and put your restrictions.
But when you have churn, the question is, when you have churn, when you have people leaving Prime Video to another platform, what triggers that?
We haven't seen much of it, so frankly, I guess it's also to do with the fact that the Prime Benefits program is a pretty solid one. I mean, if you think about it, at $9.99, there's shipping, shopping, music, Prime Video, now Prime Reading. So there's a whole bunch of benefits. So I think it's also about long-term value. That's the point that I keep going back to, that it's really going to be about the user experience and value. And this, if staying committed to that, will make sure that you're the preferred choice, and that's what we're after.
Gautam, you must be betting on churn, right? You must be betting on churn of the existing players for your services to grow. What would I know you have an A-board model, at a model level it's a very different track more consumer. But what would be you offered is different, buying different content and differentiated content?
I have only one proposition, I'm free. Nothing beats that in this country, I believe, genuinely. So in terms of churn, really, I think consumers really chase shows, right? There is a very serious brand value that most of us are trying to build. And over a period of time, we will build stickiness with the brand, for sure. But I genuinely believe that consumers genuinely go after shows. If they want the show and they want to watch it, they will go and find it out. If they have to pay for it, they will. If they don't have to, they won't. But it's just that show must be inside. So I think people chase shows a lot, and the stickiness therefore is created by the brand and the experience and what.
I agree.
So churn is not something that I genuinely bother about. I don't have it.
I believe we are at a stage where the industry is, or the customers are all about being content loyal and not platform loyal. So whenever you find some new show happening, you'll end up all hoarding out there, taking the subscription, finishing it off, and then coming back to another platform for the next show or next content piece. And again, coming back to the same story and the same logic, if you find someone who's a classic lover, he will come to the same platform that he finds a whole lot of classics. He won't want to go to multiple platforms to get that kind of content. So,
I think Gautam mentioned about consumer chasing shows, not necessarily platforms. And there is also a big debate about the scale of the show. We know the kind of the scale of the show is only increasing every kind of quarter. How do you look at the scale of the show per se when it comes to kind of attracting new consumers?
So for our shows, we go right at the top of the funnel. So I don't think we compromise because as Gautam's got the slight bit of luxury of being free to the customer, we don't have the luxury of being free to the customer. So we're slightly dependent on the subscription rather than the advertiser kind of budgets rolling into us. So I think we in fact go higher. So we go higher on the premiumness of the show in terms of the caliber of how the consumer experiences. A lot of this actually in this context has not been talked about, but technology plays a massive role in our business, right? Which didn't really exist in the case of films, some in the case of television, but we're not talking about data, we haven't talked about all the new formats of technology entering the concept of video. So the kind of experiences we will be able to create, some things we're already working on, will be for the first time viewers will be looking at it because they haven't engaged with it at that level. So whether it's technology experiences or content experiences, we actually not vary with the budget, we go right at the top of the funnel.
Vijay, we both mentioned about content and people chasing content. I have a feeling you may not agree with that. You may have people chasing platform as much as staying on platform or loyal to platform is part of your strategy.
Well, the goal is to earn loyalty, obviously, so I can't speak to that. What is important is that, I mean, sure, people chase content, but I disagree that people chase only shows. And it's really important to recognize that, you know, no two people content preferences are the same. And it's also equally important to recognize that an individual customer's moods change across the day. So it's really important to be able to provide a compelling variety. So sure, they come in for the content, and it's important for us to keep them really engaged by giving them a compelling variety of content, but I don't think it's just shows that they go after. I mean, there are so many inputs to that. The amount of time you have, what kind of a mood you're in, you know, what kind of a day you had. There's just a lot of that. And then we've seen, even among the shows, a show made for really young people, Comic Stan, being enjoyed by 45, 50-year-olds because, you know, everybody loves to have a laugh. And so it's really important to be able to provide a wide variety of compelling pieces of content across formats, because that's what drives engagement, and it's really day one for us. So we're not going to be taking our foot off the gas anytime soon.
About the prime time television is well understood. What's really prime time for OTT? Is it different for every app? I understand you're on demand, which is great service, perhaps differentiator. But is there a prime time, peak day?
Well, the 24/7 project doesn't go away, but the fact remains that we do see peak in the evenings. So 7 p.m. onwards, you will see a clear peak.
So people are still working at work office, right? They're not working from home.
People are possibly, some of them are driving. The lucky ones are driving home at 7 o'clock. Mornings 10 to 12, we tend to see good peaks. Weekends are definitely the best. So whether it's weekends, whether it's long holidays, we love Friday holidays and Monday holidays, all of us. And while TV would have really worried about long holidays, and that the numbers would drop, OTT and all of us, I'm sure, see great consumption, great binge viewing.
Television generally dips after 11. You peak after 11?
Yeah, we peak after 11 because most of our consumers would start watching something at 9:30 and then would continue watching it till the wee hours.
So what do you think is the reason television would not serve these audiences, or you're serving something different? Because television assumed the audience are gone, media kind of felt audience are not there, the ad dollars are not there.
Television would be episodic in nature, right? So you would have to do a Monday to Friday to finish watching your show, and then after 11 p.m. would be the so-called matured time bank. So,
but they would still put the best movies on it. Channels all 24 hours. You see English movie channel, Hindi movie channel, they put the best.
I guess it's more of a convenience factor that you like something and you just want to finish it. most of us are creating such compelling content that after the first episode you want to binge view and see what happens next.
Or is it like a me time? That post
So I think
me
the
time.
answer to your question is that cater to a different demographic, right? That cater to essentially where the mass market is male, female, above 35. You're actually catering to a different kind of demographic, or rather psychographic of audience. It's not even a demographic of audience. Hence, their behavior patterns, their daily patterns, their need gaps are completely different. You're trying to kind of start with a certain core and then create that core to become a larger subset of the
But
larger.
it's the same person, 11 o'clock, person doesn't change up to 11.
Not necessarily. So what we experienced, because I was in Viacom also, we were part of the launch team of Colors, right? So what we experienced at that point was the fact is that there were people that were watching shows like even Roadies during the same time in terms of catch up on YouTube during prime time time. So it's actually because India is a single TV household phenomenon per se, a lot of the younger audiences are actually watching it on their digital platforms in the same time and sitting in the same family room. So what you're getting is similar patterns to television in terms of viewership peaks, but the programming is catered to different psychographic. And I think that's the core differential.
Fair enough. About the early days, but I want to ask you something. I mean, what's really surprised you about your job? I mean, you know, in the sense of response, success, failure, besides bosses.
No, I think it's just genuinely the scale of who we are trying to target. It's a mammoth task to try and understand this, mass India, try and understand, like they said, that there are many Indias, to understand what is it that they want to watch, why is it they want to watch, draw out some hypothesis, try and make some programming. Unfortunately for all of us, it takes, by the time you understand this audience and by the time you actually create the program, it's a year down the line. And data is changing literally every day. So, it's kind of the most interesting part is how do you actually understand this amount of data that's actually you're being captured. And then from a content perspective, because if you want to deliver quality content, it cannot be delivered quickly, let's be honest. Right? Anything that is slightly premium has to have that cycle that it has to go through, which is at least 12 to 18 months, if I'm not mistaken. And data is literally coming in, pouring in every day. So there is this interesting trying to understand what works, what doesn't work. The most interesting part of my thing is that it genuinely at that scale of operations and that number of how do you really peg, how do you make sure that, how many of them are universal shows, how many of them are specific shows? It's literally the multiplex single screen arguments at any given point in time. It's the argument also in that everybody, if you ask a movie producer today, he will never tell you, oh, this is only for this set of audience. Everybody wants to do a dangal because that's the way it goes, right? The more broad-based the audience, the more the numbers. I guess it's all about that. But yeah, I think that's the most interesting part. Plus, the problem that I think all of us on the table are facing is that we all do want to create that premium content and premium thing. The talent pipeline isn't that big. That's the other challenge that I think we all face. The other end, to create it as well, there is an ecosystem that exists for television, there's an ecosystem for feature film, there's an ecosystem for advertising. There is no ecosystem for 200 to 400 minutes of premium content that exists. We are all trying to figure this out and create that ecosystem together. And I think we all benefit over a period of 3 to 4 years, hopefully.
Right. But we are all almost friends here. I mean, so you can do some candid questions. Is there a piece of content you wish you had on your platform, you got your hands on that piece, which perhaps would not come to your platform? Is this something you admire a lot?
As a personal view, it would be very different, but from a platform point of view, we are programming for the mass Indian, and we are very proud about that strategy, right? Fact remains, the international platforms who have a legacy of a whole lot of international content will, I would say, not just take time, but will still cut across different audience sets very, very differently. We cater to the Bharat, right? I mean, while of course the distinction between the India Bharat and you see the lines blurring and things like that.
Where is India left anymore? I mean, I don't see any India, I only see Bharat everywhere.
True. Yes, and that's really the huge telco revolution with the Jio and things. It's all Bharat anymore. It's not just those premium telco players anymore. So from our platform point of view, we're very happy with the kind of content we're making, the kind of pipeline we have, because these are all stories that are going to be very real, very relevant, and are going to resonate with the Indian masses. That's really where, my own personal preference would be anything different, but we hardly represent any percent of the population. Everyone in this room is hardly, is a very small percent.
It's said that you stop growing when you become very comfortable. So what are the steps you take to keep your team uncomfortable?
I don't have to do much. One of the most spoken of and one of the most fetid philosophies at Amazon is day one. Some of you would have heard it, some of you may have read about it. And Jeff Bezos has this really interesting philosophy that keeps the company's culture rooted to day one. So there's a set of characteristics that are defined, which all of us embrace the minute you walk into the portals of Amazon, and you're constantly tested for it. I don't want to belabor it because it's going to sound kind of, pedantic, and I don't mean that. But it is really very interesting. You could see his talks on day one and day two culture. I think the last shareholders meeting, he was asked the question, so what is day two according to you? And it was pretty stark. So I think it's an overall culture in the company, and it's fantastic. It applies to all of us. I think the other interesting thing that also comes through is that we presented with such an amazing opportunity to bring so many great Indian stories to the fore. I think it'll be a sad day if we actually rest on our laurels and say, oh, I think we told a few new stories and we're all very happy about it. I mean, this is a great time to be in this environment, doing the work that we're doing. So I think that itself keeps me paranoid.
We'll take a few questions from the audience. So if you could just introduce yourself and ask a question. And do tell who you're addressing the question. Yes, please. Sana from Indian Express.
Yeah, hi. Mostly as SVOD platforms, how much has piracy kind of affected your business, and how do you plan to curb it in the coming days?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in coming days. So I think the way we try to fight piracy, at least that's the culture that we come from, is that we make it like we almost make the pirater feel sad and bad about the fact that he's pirating, or he or she is pirating. That's the logic. So make it affordable, make the user experience great, make the ease of access, ease of payment, all those functionalities so simple and create such a fabulous value that you're able to convert the pirater into almost making them feel bad about the fact that they're pirating this piece of content. Right? We're not there as yet, but we're in that process or in that direction, making that happen. And I think from a regulatory perspective also, there's a lot of things that will potentially, and technology will play a key role in terms of, whether it was a lot of the Pirate Bay kind of sites, torrent sites that were kind of curbed and controlled, there's a little bit of cleanup. So I think it will be a joint effort on the infrastructure side of things and the regulator side of things, and even with all platforms, with the education that we're passing on to the audiences, right? Rather than going to that store and buying that pirated DVD or downloading it on the torrent, it's almost like all this marketing and all this investment is also going and partially educating the audiences. So I think movies suffers the most. I don't see TV getting that much pirated. Some of the originals also have been pirated. We heard of obviously what happened with the Game of Thrones, but I'm saying that what we're trying to do is almost make them feel bad.
But are you greater the content, greater the motivation to pirate it?
Therefore, the greater the compulsion for us to deliver great value to the customers. I mean, she's smart. If she sees great value, and there's no reason, because this is so much more convenient.
No, but I think also like the experience, right? Right now we just talk about HD, there's 4K, 8K, there's AR, VR, there's immersive video. Pirates won't do any of this. So when you look at the future of video per se, the future of video piracy is not going to be relevant because you can't pirate this per se. So
Tech
will solve a lot of the problems for sure.
This is Ulas, and my question is to Gautam. So, we have seen evolution in terms of distribution of television in India, like DTH coming into the picture. Would MX Player will play the same role? Like, everybody will contact you and you will be playing it free for the audience, like she said, people like content free. And through you, they will, came into our phone, like DTP will start. Direct to phone.
I'm not so sure in terms of we just being aggregator. That's not the model alone.
The kind of partnership you are having and the content
Yes.
on MX Player is developing very speedily.
Yes, it's the scale that we operate. There is a huge distribution platform that we do offer to content creators, and which is why we are partnering with them. And they find value in that partnership, which is why they are also on board with us. We make sure that the content gets distributed to a new set of audiences. There are a new set of audiences for their business content. But it's not only an aggregator model. I guess we're doing our own originals to make sure that there is enough and more traction that comes out of that also. So it's not just an aggregation.
We can take just one last question, please. Yes, the hand back. Yes.
Hi. This question can be answered by anyone. I am really intrigued to know, apart from subscription fees, what are the revenue options that you have? And is there going to be a change in that? Are you trying to tap into different revenue options?
Everybody has different revenue models, so we can take another question. Yes, sir.
My name is Siraj Sayyed. I'm from filmfestivals.com. The question is to Zubin Dubai. You've been a player in the media and entertainment sector for about 50 years now, like you said. But the overwhelming content that you had earlier was all film-based, or in fact, feature films themselves. So are you able to monetize any of that right now on OTT, or do you have to depend on entirely new content that you acquire?
So it's like I just said during the entire panel discussion was that there's an entire sect of audiences of the Bharat that we're talking of, which are diehard fans of older content or of that kind of content. They're fans. To that extent, we've seen comments on various social platforms of ours where you see guys who are fans who have gone and watched a Dawn of Amitabh's first Dawn about 372 times. And then we've got similar such kind of numbers and astronomical numbers of fanatics of that kind of content. And what they've been in fact pushing us very subtly in various forums is that can we have one destination to drive and consume this content? And lo and behold, we got the platform built in that breadth itself to cater to that audience who says, I want great content which I've experienced all my childhood, and can I have it at one place? Because right now supply and availability of going and finding it on 20 different platforms is a challenge for me. And for that I'm willing to pay.
So, thank you very much, and thank you all of you for joining this panel.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Rajiv. I think you asked some pertinent questions, and we're all a little lucky today because we got insight, at least a few insights, thanks to this eavesdropping session.